Hello, I'm Dr. Cheryl, and welcome to Wake Up with Dr. Cheryl, Wealth Transformation. Our show is raising the awareness and consciousness in the relationship with wealth and unconditional love. Always remember that your present situation is not your final destination, but the best is yet to come by Zig Ziglar. Our show this evening is about the wealth of integration and the power of equality with our special honored guest, Melba Beals. Melba Beals retired in 2014 from Dominican University in San Rafael, California, as a professor, emeritus founder and chair of the communications department, and founder of a program called Torch, which facilitates curriculum course completion for entering students. Beals' life is defined by her commitment to equality for human beings. One extraordinary acknowledgement of her work is this country's highest civilian medal, the Congressional Medal of Honor. Congress voted to bestow this precious award on her and 8 other members of the Little Rock Nine for risking their lives to integrate Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. That risk taken in 1957 led to what historians labeled a domino effect downfall of segregation of schools across the South. The Little Rock firestorm is acknowledged as a critical linchpin in the success of a civil rights movement in this country. Melba's struggle for equality continued throughout her life. She earned her doctorate in international multicultural education in order to prepare herself to support challenged students, both national and international, in their pursuit of education. Beals says education is the major key to personal equality that cannot be taken away. Dr. Beals' illustrious career has included work as a news correspondent, 10 years on air as an award-winning NBC News correspondent, and as an ABC radio talk show hostess. Dr. Beals has written several award-winning books, including Warriors Don't Cry, The Searing Battle to Integrate Little Rock Central High School. This million-plus bestseller was garnered many awards, including the Student Readers Award of one of the top 10 nonfiction books read in 2016. Melba is the mother of twin sons and a grown-up daughter who is a psychologist. Welcome, Melba. Thank you. I've already done an intro for you, which we at the studio, because you are well known by a lot of the people here at the studio. They know who you are and what you've done, and etc. But we are honored to have you here tonight.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So maybe we should start with a little bit of your history on how you got to Little Rock 9.
I grew up, and actually I'm writing a book about that to be releasing called Baby Warrior. I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. I was born in North Little Rock. And this was during the 40s. I'm going to be 75, December 7th.
Wow.
And so this was during the 40s when the word diversity, integration had not yet been heard of. People were strictly settled into a very old-fashioned screen and curtain of separation. And so remember, this is long before the 1954 decision that separate is not equal. So I grew up going to a separate school, living in a separate community. What was interesting to me was, like, at 2, I was unhappy. I said to my mother when I was 3, and you have to see me as a very interesting child. The more I write this book, the more I understand. I said to my mother when I was about 3, I said, how did I get here? And my mother said to me, oh, the stork brought you. So I said, cool. So I got a red wagon, and I parked it outside, and I sat in it for hours, because here was what I figured. The stork came to bring me. He's going to come back, bring other people. I'm hiking out, getting out of Little Rock, right?
Wow.
Because the one thing I wanted was out. Because from the beginning of my childhood, I could see how white people made the black people behave, how frightened my parents were. I could see how frightening it was at night when the Klan was expected to ride. When I was 5 years of age, sitting in my church at about 10 of 7 one evening, I watched them hang a black man.
Oh.
The black man who was a kind of a fix-it man in our neighborhood, who used to come to my house and bring his little boy to play with me. And I remember looking up, and my grandmother said, look to the ground, because the Klan was in the church. They were in the back of the church. And my grandmother said, keep your eyes on the ground and don't move. And she was just the grasp she had on me. Don't move, child, don't move. If they think that you saw them, you'll be dead. And I remember being very angry because there were 75 people in that church. And I thought, all right, what are you going to do? So 5 of you die. Do something, because there were maybe 6 Klansmen, one of them with a long barrel shotgun that he was wheeling around. I said, let's go for it. And nobody, so from the beginning, I was a weird kid, And I did not like the rules of the South. I couldn't go on the merry-go-round, couldn't go swimming, couldn't sit. One day, my grandmother took me up the front steps to the bus. Heck, I took a seat. And I didn't want to sit in the back of the bus. It's smelly back there and oily and icky,
Yeah.
So I wasn't with the program from the beginning.
What do you think gave you the courage to be different?
I have no idea. I
just
think,
innate?
I was born a very precocious child because, I also remember being 5 and them saying, that's the white lady's bathroom, and the black lady's bathroom is down that hall, down the stairs, past Bubba, the guy with the scars on his face, and then behind the black cardboard boxes. Right.
So you just knew innately.
Hey, I want that room right over there, the one with the yellow daisies on the door.
Yeah.
Got to know what's in there.
Yeah.
So I did go in there.
How
And
did
I
your
was taller than most kids my age. And
Well,
so at
that
first they
helped.
thought I might be a maid. And then I started to open one of the little doors and go in, and they got furious.
How did your
Furious.
parents handle this?
I think they wondered what they had. They didn't quite know. My grandmother kept saying, after a while, she said, don't talk to anybody. And she got me a diary. And she said, write down, because I was also quite psychic, and I'd walk to people and say, there's a baby in there. Or, I would say odd things to people. So she said, don't say anything to anybody. Just write down what you think, because you're going to get us killed if you keep speaking the way you do.
Yeah.
Because, we would be walking down the sidewalk, and I would spend hours polishing I wore saddle shoes forever. And my grandmother would say, cleanliness is next to godliness. I'd spend days polishing the saddle shoes. Now I'm walking down the sidewalk in the city, and if there was a white person walking toward you and there was mud, we were expected to step off the sidewalk. And the rules were, don't look them in the eye, don't say anything. If they call you nigger, or if they hit you or do bad things to you, you can't do anything back. Well, those rules don't work for me. From the get, I said, no, wait a minute. And I could just see how my parents behaved in front of them, kind of like with the same courtesy that they expected me to act towards them. Yes, sir, yes, ma'am, I hated all of that, all of that.
A nonconformist.
I wasn't ready for that. At 5, I was ready to, hey, get a gun, let's go, And so that made my life really pretty difficult. And recently I've been interviewing my brother, who grew up with me, till I was 12, 15 or so. And he had a different attitude. He became the first U.S. Marshal ever appointed in southwestern Arkansas. And his attitude was a little bit different in that he thought, okay, these people are in the way. Step aside, step around them, and keep going, And
What
so,
people?
for example, he went to apply to become a police, and they said, no, you're black, you're not becoming a policeman. And he just waited until he could apply. And he remembers in the beginning his officers that he was in charge of calling him the N-word and being really nasty, and he sort of negotiated it. But so this just gives you an example of the difficulties of growing up in the 40s and 50s in the South, so that later on, there was a school called Central High School, and on Sundays, my grandmother and mother we'd go to church, and we'd go for a ride to this ice cream store called Double Deck, and we get ice cream. And from the beginning, my grandmother was very interesting, because she'd say, there are 3 kinds of ice cream. There's vanilla, strawberry, and chocolate. They all are really, really good. God loves them all because God created vanilla, strawberry, and chocolate people, right? So from the beginning, she would teach us that you're equal, you're valuable. And so there was this huge school. It's like 8 square blocks in diameter with topiary in front and a nice pool and all this equipment. I thought, why can't I go to that school? That's in my neighborhood. It's not far from where I live. Why do I have to go to the other school?
Was it predominantly white, or
Predominantly?
it was all white?
There was no predominant. Remember, we're in the South. Before 1954, you had black schools, which were crap. First of all, at the end of the year, somebody would back a truck up and they would load all the dirty, used equipment that the people in the white schools messed up, and they'd drop it off to your school. So we'd get like 3-legged tables, typewriters with torn keys, that kind of thing, right? So I wasn't ready for all this, and I said to my mother, "Why can't I go to that school?" And she said, "Shh." My father did. You don't ask those questions. You get us into a lot of trouble. And so as I grew up, I kept looking at that school, thinking, really? Because it was 8 stories high, and we could hear from the black cooks that worked in there that this school had apartments in it. It was ranked as the top 10 physical building of high schools in the country. Why not me, right? Instead of the one I was going to. And so naturally, when the teacher passed around this little slip of paper, first was the 1954 decision, and that was a traumatic day for me. But secondly, the teacher passed around this piece of paper saying, who lives in the neighborhood and wants to go? Have your parents sign this paper if you're eligible to go. So I thought, well, no need of disturbing my mother with this
Did
piece
you
of paper.
Forge?
So I signed her name to it and handed it back.
Hey,
So she never knew that I was that I had signed it. So the process in between that was the 54 decision went down, and the Arkansas School Board had to start planning. All the school boards of the South had to now start planning how they were going to comply with that decision. And Little Rock said, okay, we'll do as little as possible, as slow as possible. So I was getting steamed by that. But the NAACP then came in and said, no, we're gonna speed this up a tad, And so there came the day when we were in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I was thinking, well, this is great. I'd never been out of Little Rock. And it was like free at last in Cincinnati, Ohio. And the television came on.
How old were you then?
Well, by then I'm 13.
Okay.
And the television came on, and Walter Cronkite came on. And he said, these people are about to integrate. This is in early August, Central High School, Little Rock, Arkansas. And my father called my mother on the phone at this moment and says, that is your daughter they're talking about. Her name is on the list. And I'll never forget my uncle. You know how like when the wagons go in a circle when the Indians are coming? My uncle, my aunt, my mother, my grandmother, all these relatives in Ohio, they went in a circle around me and they said,
what are
who
you doing?
Gave you permission to do this? You're going to get us all killed. You can't do this. And I just wanted to stay in Cincinnati.
What a spirit.
I just wanted to stay in Cincinnati, Ohio. By this time I thought, wait a minute now. Because you realize I'm young and I don't understand the world, not really. My grandmother got me a globe, and what I didn't understand was the difference in culture. You take me to Cincinnati, Ohio, number one, I could go to restaurants, right? Number two, the white neighbors across the street said, come over and have dinner with us. Number three, no one was calling me nigger. No one was telling me I wasn't valuable, and no one was preventing me to go where? To the movies? I could get on the bus and sit wherever I wanted. So to me, Cincinnati, Ohio appeared to be heaven. And I said to my parents, forget all that. Let's just stay here.
How did they handle that?
No.
So how long did you have to stay in Little Rock before you could leave? How old were you?
16. Going on 17.
So 2 years.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So with the help of the 101st Airborne, imagine how dangerous the situation must be if President Eisenhower sends the Guard. I attended Central High School through walking through mobs with people shooting into the living room of our house, with standing in line waiting to be hanged. I've stood in line before on the ropes, like as far as the curtains, and I know I'm going to be next.
Well, you must have had God inside of you because,
Yeah.
wow.
When people try to tell me there is no God and there's no religion,
Wow.
I just laugh.
I mean,
I don't know who you have, but
yeah. Oh my goodness.
the only way I've
well,
made
your
it.
grandmother perpetuated
Exactly. I've just written a
Yeah.
book called Building Christian Faith Under Fire, because it's under fire.
that. Literally.
It's totally, for me, under fire
my
that you build
goodness.
faith and that you have to have.
Yes.
At one point, I was in front of Central High School walking down this sidewalk, and these men were behind my mother and myself, and they had ropes. There's a whole gang of them on the first day. Excuse me. And they were about to hang us. And they were after my mother. My mother was beautiful. She didn't look black. She's a very, very pretty lady. And they were saying all sorts of nasty things about before they hung her, what they were going to do. This was a really ugly scene. And this was the first time I tested it. I was 15, and my grandmother had said, God is as close to you as your skin. You have to ask, and he will be there. And I always thought, you know. And so this time I had no choice because these men are after us. And so I started saying the 23rd Psalms, and I start praying.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, how are you going to rescue us? How are we going to get out of here? Certainly the white police aren't going to stop us. They're not going to help us out. And at this point, the men, we got past a certain point running, my mother and I. And the men who were chasing us at this point fell over the trees and brush in the road, giving us like 3-4 seconds to get to the car. So I have a God. Nobody else in the crowd may have one. I have my own, who's protected me all. I mean, believe me, 75. Recently in Arkansas, about 4 years ago, we were celebrating an anniversary, and we're the only living people in the world that have these life-size statues on the Capitol grounds. And we were looking at these statues, and there were 700 reporters there from around the world. And they said, what's your comment? What do you have to say? And we just said, we never thought we'd live this long because, we lived under constant terror for more than a year. And eventually we had to leave Little Rock. We had to leave Little Rock to come here. In early 1950, from 57 to 58, I went to Central High School under that whole daily you are a soldier thing. Then from 58 to 59, school year, I was out of school totally. We were waiting. The governor, rather than to have us come back the second year, closed the schools, shut them all down. And so I was at home by myself. And then 59, September, I left Arkansas because the Ku Klux Klan had 10,000 dead, 5,000 alive. And think about it, in 1959, $5,000 in Little Rock could buy you a car, house, whatever you'd like. And so I had to leave. So the NAACP put these chits out across the country saying, who will take one of these 9 children who are in jeopardy? And by then there's 8 of us because Ernie had graduated. And so the family that volunteered to take me was called the McCabe's. Now, mind you, I dreamt that what I was going to get was going to be a black family that was wealthy, in the NAACP, Ebony Magazine, 17 Magazine, and my own telephone.
That was your dream.
What I got was a white family. My dad was a professor at San Francisco State. My mom was a marching, campaigning go-getter.
Oh.
And when I get off the plane, I'm being rushed by this group of white people, and I think, ooh, where are they going? Right? Not me, certainly, but they were. So I got taken home to this home, and to tell you the truth, they're still my family today. I'll have Christmas.
They're educated.
I talked to my sister this afternoon. I had, a couple of them have died, but I have remaining. At the beginning, I had 3 sisters and a brother, and a mom and a dad. My dad was professor at Sonoma State. He found it when I was a little girl. If you go to Sonoma State College today, there's a little gazebo in it. It says Dr. George McCabe. Well, that was my dad. And when I was little, we lived on this farm, 6064 Melita Road, and Daddy was drawing Sonoma State University on a piece of butcher paper. And he and his teacher pals were smoking cigars and drinking red wine. And so I lived in this family and learned what was possible.
And what a wonderful role model that you had.
Well, my mom, is Quaker. They're both Quaker. And so to say that they're role models is selling it short. What they gave me was a sense of my own freedom. Like, who builds a school? Who says they want a school? It wasn't the daddy, it was somebody wealthy. We're very poor. Mother was taking money out of the cookie jar to buy me sweaters. My white mother was, But my father believed you could do what you want, and my mother believed you could do what you want. And so he would look at me and he would say, "You're never less than my daughter." And so at one point, the neighbors came to throw rocks because I was there. And I was really frightened, I was like crying. I was like in the closet, What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Papa said, "Come with me, girl, and watch." And so he went out and he got a bucket and he filled it full of rocks and he threw them back. And so, with living with them taught me more than any
Unconditional love.
Unconditional love. They took me to swim in the Santa Rosa swimming pool. And the guy says, "You can't come in." He went, he got all his pals and placards, and they marched so loud that after a couple of days, the swimming pool called them and said, "Bring your daughter." And so, they taught me that, hey, don't stop now.
Now, how did your biological parents handle this?
Very well. My mother knew that my life was threatened, and so was hers, and that we couldn't stay. As long as I stayed in Little Rock in that house, I was a total threat to them. I had to get out in order for them to survive. And so, although she didn't want to let me go at that young age, they all became friends. Eventually, when I left, she said to me that first time, "If they call you nigger, if they don't let you eat at the table with them, if they make you sleep outdoors, come home." Well, that isn't what they did. My father built me a bed, and they had 2 bedrooms, and he put the girls in one bedroom, and he put me in that bedroom. And he never, ever, until the day they died, showed me anything but love. And he would always say to me, "You are never less than my child. You're not less than my daughter. Don't you ever forget that." And so my mom just died about 3 years ago, and I was one of the few black people. I was like one of 3 or 4 black people at the funeral. And a lot of people there didn't know who I was. They're from Santa Rosa. Well, my mother had started the Quaker Center up there, the worship center, whatnot, So this room was filled with people saying goodbye to Mother. And when I walked in, one of my brothers and sisters stood up and said, and she's survived by our sister Beals, Joy, me. And everybody looked around and they said, "Oh, so that's why she was holding your hand." Because they never understood when I was there as a teenager why my mother was driving me all over and enrolling me in school and all that stuff, And so that experience was like a balance between, I have a different point of view of the world. And I'm not walking around with the mind full of hostility about white people because my mother was white, my father was white. And that sort of really counteracted what I could have felt,
Well, you are truly blessed.
I feel I'm really, really blessed because I have a view of the world that few people have.
And you are also blessed with what you have given to humanity.
Well, you have to share.
Yes, and so if we can go on to, now I've already talked about your education and where you've gone, and you were at Dominican for what, 16, 17 years?
Yeah, 16 years,
So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, when I first went there, they thought I was just the oddball because I said I wanted to start they didn't have a journalism department. And I said that's what I wanted to do, and they sort of looked at me as, and I was just part-time. And I ended up, starting what would be their communication department, which others have come behind me and moved it on. I enjoyed teaching there. I was their first black sitting chair in 123 years. Were there people against it? I'm sure, but I always wonder about being first, but then it just is,
Well, you started from a young age.
It did, So at this point, I just remember what my father said to me: "You're never less than," and I just move ahead.
I mean, what a beautiful thing to say.
Yeah. So so I had the first 99.9% of the people at Dominican are wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a great home to practice new ideas. I love it. I love that university. I had a lot of offers around the world. I had offers at Yale, Carnegie. I had great offers, but at Dominican, I loved the relationship between the students and the professors, which is that the primary mission of Dominican is to be close to the students and to serve the students at the highest level. And I liked that part of it. I really, really liked how that relationship could develop.
More of like a one-on-one.
It was more like a one-on-one. Yeah. And so, like I'm speaking at in Sonoma on the first educational conference, and my true belief about education is that I can't teach you unless I know you. And, one of the things that changed my whole thing was my sons. I have identical twin adopted sons who are now 25. And when I adopted them, they were 4. And the thing they taught me was, A, everybody does not learn alike. And B, you better know how they learn if you expect to teach them. I remember walking with my son Evan. They're both artists, incredible artists who've already sold paintings. And so I remember when they were very little, they were artists. By the time they were in the 3rd or 4th grade, they were selling paintings already. And I remember once walking through the museum with Evan, and Evan was saying, I was just really like a bull in a china shop. 3 times 4 is 12. 4 times 4 is 16. And I'm doing the times tables with him. And he says, not necessarily.
You mean he was
says,
thinking a different
right,
way?
Says, not always, Mama. Sometimes that can be 20. And I said, Argh! And there was a guy, there was a guy in there, a scientist from UC Berkeley. And he said, lady, your son is correct. He's thinking, in another countenance of man. Mm-hmm. He's correct and you're not. And he sat down and he showed me how. And right away, Evan could understand what he's talking about, but I did not. And so what I got was these people, they're visual learners. You want to go A, you want to go with the alphabet, go like this. So I learned a lot. Because of them, I went to school and took Linda Mood Bell. Mm-hmm. And so I was ready for people when they arrived from, in 9/11, when all the Arab students arrived, and the students from international students at Dominican. That drove me actually back to get another doctorate in international multicultural education. Yeah, sure. So I studied the Muslim religion, and I thought, oopsie, I don't know anything about this, And so I've enjoyed teaching. I've enjoyed mothering my sons at this senior age because I learned new stuff, new things,
That's what life's about anyway, until we take our last breath.
You gotta be willing to do new stuff.
Absolutely.
And so every day they bring new vision into my life, things I would never explore, trust me when I tell you. If they weren't there, saying, well, let's do this, like Evan gave me a lecture yesterday, Mom, you're not walking enough. You're going to be stiff if you don't walk more. I don't see you moving enough, Yeah. And so Matthew gives me lectures about my food. Mother, you're not really drinking that Coke, are you? So it's been interesting. It's been fun.
Kind of an alter conscience.
It's like, it's a fun thing. It's having this inspiration in your life that you just didn't expect,
So when I spoke with you on the phone about, coming on the show, you said to me, do you want to talk politics? And I was thinking about it, because I definitely have strong opinions. But, I know that you're well-versed and you've had lots of experience with Washington, D.C. So, yes, let's talk about it.
Well, I just wrote an article that I hope will, somebody asked me to write an article. And one of the things I wrote was my sadness at Mr. Trump's behavior, because all along as I've taught, I've said to all my students, how blessed are we to be able to observe this election? And I would assign, you go study this, you go study this, you go look up the history. Duh! How am I going to explain to a child what PUSSY means other than a cat? And how am I going to explain to a child when a man raises his hand and says, this is the measure of my genitalia? And how am I going to explain to a child why a man says, I can stand in the middle of New York and shoot somebody and it won't matter? How am I going to explain to a student how you behave like you are handicapped and you expect that to be interesting? And what wall? Really? Now you have people down in actually San Jose writing all over a wall, make this wall higher.
Ooh, yeah.
Right. And so my question is, I wrote this thing in my thing says, please, Mr. Reagan, come back to us for a day. Send your ghost back to us for a day. I was on a board with Ronald Reagan. He, A, didn't necessarily like black people. B, certainly wasn't for my quest. But you know what? He never, ever disrespected me. And every single time he entered the room, he would go, Melba. He would listen to me talk, stand back if I was about to go out a door. His decorum was unquestionable. I don't care what his politics are. You have a right to think differently than I do. But you do not have a right to present yourself in a way. When my sons are watching this, what do my sons think? That presidential candidates behave this way, calling Hillary a nasty old woman, and now he has people chanting out loud, let's arrest her. And I'm not saying she's perfect, but I understand Hillary Clinton in a different way than other people do. You forget, I'm from the hills of Little Rock.
Right.
And if you were to go to Little Rock, look at pictures of her when she was younger. She cares nothing about clothes. They told her unless she changed the way she dressed. If you look at her biography on CNN, they told her unless you change the way you dress. She was a stone cold slob, wearing her hair all over her head, dirty tennis shoes when he was the governor the first time. But you know what she was doing? She was walking around Little Rock and North Little Rock in black neighborhoods. I wouldn't be caught in. She taught these people the definition of healthcare. She raised the elevation of education. She walked door to door in those sloppy, old, dirty shoes. So much so that she was in the black neighborhood so much that after a while she was protected by the people in there. And so I know her work.
The blacks
the
would
black
protect
neighborhood
her.
in North Little Rock, she was protected because she was there.
Yeah.
And they knew at least for that moment she was going to listen to them.
Right.
And she taught those old people what is the definite. Nobody down in Little Rock understood the definition of healthcare.
Yeah.
Where? Who? How? Nobody had a doctor. Do you understand when I was a little girl? There was one doctor, his name was Janice. That guy made an announcement. What was his announcement? He would see Negroes twice a week, maybe for a few hours. And if you went to see him and you got there at 9 o'clock, you might get seen by 6 because every single white person that walked in the door went before you. Okay? So when people talk about Hillary, she worked for the Children's Fund, and she's just done so much that I see it all from a different perspective, is that some people talk, others work at it. It's not that she hasn't made mistakes. I'm sure she's made major errors. But the two things I know about her and both Bill is that they don't care about money that much. Not a lot. They really don't. And number two, that they have the praying interest of the people in their hearts, you know. And I don't care what he did, and he probably did every bit of it, because I remember telling him off once myself about it. I was in that group called FOBs, Friends of Bill, and we were written about in the IJ. And there's one time when he came to the city after the Monica Lewinsky thing, and I said, shame on you. Glad your mama ain't alive, right? I don't care what he did. I do care. But he wasn't talking about it,
Right.
you know? And so I said, shame, shame, shame on you. And he was in tears, you know, because he says, your mother was alive. You know what she would do? You know? And so I'm just concerned politically with the outcome of all this. How has this whole campaign changed everything? And I don't understand who we are as a country. The woman who works with me, her name's Judy, and she said this morning, Donald Trump has done us a favor because we had this big old boil on our booties, and now it's been exposed, meaning if you have enough people in this country to vote for him, who are these people? Is that not scary to you?
It's very scary.
Yeah. Where are these people? Are they your neighbors? Do they live down the street from you?
Yeah, I know.
And I hear all these women being interviewed saying, I'm just going to vote for him no matter what. He doesn't mean anything about it. He's just doing white talk.
Oh, God, please.
I just cringe because I don't know who they are. So I don't really know where we're going, but the article I wrote said, please, Mr. Reagan, come back for a couple of days and clean house. Could you talk to the heads of the Republican Party and say to them, speak up, you know? And could you talk to somebody? Because Donald Trump is enlisting people to join an evolutionary movement. And you had the other day this picture on television of these people with rocks and bats in their hands, and I thought, where are we going with this? Didn't we go through this? And didn't I just go through this in Little Rock? And didn't we come out on the other side? And where are we going with this? That's how I feel about it politically now. No matter who wins, and I pray she does. Excuse me, can we just talk about resumes? Yeah, she made some mistakes, but my good feelings about this is, number one, if she gets elected, we get 2 for 1.
2 for 1.
Bill was a great president. I don't care about his bad habits. He was a fabulous president. He left us with money on board.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
He did a lot of really good things. So you're going to have the energy of 2 people. That's what I think. But number one, the most important thing is when somebody comes to apply for a job, isn't the first thing you look at their resume?
You would hope so.
And don't you think
their
that
history,
education-wise and experience-wise, I don't think we are in a spot where we can start somebody on training wheels at this point. Not with ISIS where they are.
What do you think about the Bernie Sanders situation?
I was frightened of Bernie. I love Bernie, and I think he had some really good points. And my hope is that she integrates him into what she's doing. But Bernie just became a Democrat 3.5 minutes ago.
Well, didn't he have to be able to
Bernie
run
was for 30
president?
years. Nobody.
Independent.
Right. Where was Bernie 30 years? When I was, I researched, and I wanted to know, well, so show me what Bernie did for us. I couldn't find anything for families, children, people of color. I just couldn't find anything. And so I think he has some great ideas, but some of his ideas were not practical. But I do think he had spiritual energy, and I think that energy should be utilized and harnessed, and I'm sure she will. I'm sure she's going to incorporate him. The thing about her is she's not possessive and jealous. She will incorporate him in her program. I have faith that will happen, because he did have a great amount of countenance. And listen, he's not Donald Trump. He's a nice man.
Yeah, definitely.
He's a really nice man.
Do you know, have you looked at Jill Stein?
I haven't.
She's the Green Party. I was just curious if you
I
had.
the other guy who's running for the Green Party is stressful.
Oh, I don't know much about him.
Well, they keep asking him about capitals and names of things, and he doesn't know. It's a little bit frightening.
Okay.
Jill Stein, they've not done much interview. I check in MSNBC, CNN. I even look at Fox sometimes, which takes a lot of, I don't drink, but it takes a brownie or two to get to Fox. Because then you really realize that, wait a minute. I agree that people think differently than I do. It would be okay for Donald, probably the other day, I came to some recognition with Donald Trump. I looked at that, and everybody ought to look at the bio of Donald Trump on CNN. You should look at the bio of Hillary Clinton to see who is she really. Get an idea before you vote. And then you should look at the bio of Donald Trump. And at the end of the one for him, I concluded that I needed to love him more, that we all need to pray for him more. Because his son talks about how when he was little, when Donald Trump was little, and he would go to his grandfather's
who is allegedly was a pimp.
But allegedly.
But
would go there. But what would the guy do? He'd say, "Let's go collect rent." In other words, Donald Trump's parents told him that there's only winning, there is no losing. And there's a quote running on the air now where he talks about the fact that he has to win. he can't lose. And so if you don't feel I think we'd be better off had his parents hugged him and said,
Yeah,
I love you.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
You're perfect the way you are, Donald.
Yeah.
What a cutie pie you are. Oh, is that your nose or did you steal that? What a cute nose. If they just told him sweet things.
And his father was a KKK,
Supposedly.
allegedly.
Well, by the time he was 30, he was already sued once or twice for racism in his apartment houses.
Yeah.
And today, most embarrassingly, he came out to talk nasty about Obama and health care. So here he is. He's on the lawn giving this great speech about how all the people in his business, I think in Mar-a-Lago or whatever it is, are going to have to pay more money for Obamacare. And one of his henchmen came out and said, we don't use Obamacare. We're self-insured. Right? Well, why doesn't he know this? And why is he hiring, sending all that stuff abroad to be made? All his ties, his beef, all that stuff that we see, his perfume is made abroad, So
he's feeding into that.
My main trick is not that is that his decorum. Run all day, but give me some nice decorum that my children can look at and mimic. And I think people should think differently, but not that different.
Well, to me, he's an embarrassment and shameful.
Think of what the Europeans think.
I talked to them.
One of my best girlfriends
and
lives in
they're
Paris.
laughing at us.
Yes, they're saying, "What on earth?"
I mean, they're also fearful. I mean, I talk to Europeans all the time now, and they're fearful because it's scary what is happening to the U.S. What's happening? They're in fear because they look at us as the number one in the world.
They also are frightened if he gets in. And the other thing that's happening now that we're not discussing is, are the Russians tapping Hillary's emails? And if so,
or the Chinese, both.
Yeah. Why don't we care more?
Yeah.
And why hers and not his?
Well, I think Putin and him have something going
anyway.
Well,
rumor has it he owes $80 million to the Russians. So we have some interesting things going. So I want all that settled, and I want him to have the right to run. Certainly he has the right to run, but I want him not to perform in such a way that I can't say to Evan and Matthew, this is how I want you. These are my babies, and George and all my babies that I've raised. This is how I've raised a whole bunch of kids, and I want to be able to say to all my kids, this is how I want you to behave in public.
Yeah, right. Yeah, not using this as an example.
Right. Mm-hmm. I don't want to know that your large hands indicate different. Please.
So, with that, what would you like to talk about? Since you have the stage right now, what else would you like to talk about?
That the greatest gift we all have is gratitude.
Absolutely.
And that America is okay. We are okay. And we're going to be okay. And that what got us, and I above everyone else who's gone through having to be guarded by the 101st, which are these elite officers, understands that in the end, no matter how good your gun is, none of that works. That in the end, the only thing that works is love and negotiation. And in some ways, Obama has tried to show us that. Has it been real successful?
Oh, totally.
Not always, because he really is the only one who understands that point of view. And it's funny, some of my white friends say to me, well, when he got elected, they go, you were invited to the inauguration, and now all of you black people have it up in the world and blah, blah. People, the first thing that man saw when he came in the world was the end of a white boob. And for the first year he was here, that is all he knew, right? He adores his mother and his grandmother and his family that's alive now. And I understand, because I love my mother and my father. Even to talk about my father and mother, I, cry. And recently my sister, I have a sister called Judy. Recently my sister went to Norway, and she was in a fire and got injured there, And I was just like torn apart until we could get her back here, to the United States. Because somebody said, why are you so upset? Well, we've been together for 58 years. What am I going to do without, and I call her, we talk to each other every day at dusk.
Yeah.
What shall I do about that, And so when you have an understanding of people, if there's somebody you really dislike, meet them, greet them, get to understand who they are, and then
usually there's some pain inside.
There's something that you could share,
Yeah.
And so when I use the word namaste, I really believe that the God in me is the God in everybody around, And I just, in the end, think that is the only way to solve problems. And I would say, whoever you are, don't complain if you don't vote. You want to go vote for Donald? I have dear friends, I have two really dear friends. I have one friend that's been my friend for 25 years, who recently said to me, well, that's okay, come over anyway. So on the night of the debate, we in my little den, my little humble den, we had this group of people. It's like every time Donald groaned, I go, snort, snort. and then what you heard the therapist said, the snort, snort, was that he was giving himself approval. And every time Hillary would make that's what the therapist said. Yeah. And every time Hillary would make a score, I go, yes! And so we sat there in the room, and at the end of the night, we said, but how much do we love each other? Yeah. And that's, that's what I think it's all about.
It's unconditional love.
In the end, the only thing that is going to get us over
that's the only thing.
Is going to be love and a willingness to talk.
Absolutely.
If we're angry with each other,
one thing that I want to say about the Obamas, I think that they've set a wonderful example for family.
Oh, yeah.
I think that you can just tell there's so much love there.
When other people go low, you go high, she says. And is she a hot speaker?
I mean, it's wonderful.
No, I believe that they have done personal best, and I pray for them daily because it's just frightening, the position that puts you in, to have that much light. And I've never been that much highlighted, but I've been so exposed when I was an NBC news person that I couldn't go shopping, at night. When we went home for the 50th anniversary, my babies were little, and we stayed in this hotel, the same hotel that Clinton stayed in. And this woman somehow invaded. We were in one of the presidential suites, and somehow here I am, no bra, hair overhead. You know what you look like in the morning when you first get up. And this woman comes from beneath my bed and goes, she's been in there. She broke. She was a photographer, that broke
dirty,
in. Dirty.
Dirty.
No make. They don't even say no makeup, say no nothing. So my feelings are that privacy, the frightening part of being, so you don't have your own privacy. I try. Right. People say to me, well, like, for example, recently when I was getting my doctorate, now people are calling me from USF and saying, why didn't you tell us who you were, and blah, 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 blah. It's because my whole goal was to get through there without you finding out who I was. And sure enough, the last day, as I was graduating, the head of the university said, I should have gotten suspicious. I was on my little walker, and I was in line to graduate, to get my doctorate. And he said, you wait here, Bill. So you come out of line. And I thought, why? You're not taking this away from me. Did I fail a test? What's going on? And he made me walk on a different ramp and walk up in front. And then he said, ladies and gentlemen, and there were thousands of people in the audience. And ladies and gentlemen, you're the presidents of history, blah, 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 blah. And I started crying because I thought, this is not what I want for my graduates. I just want to get through the line. And my family was there, and so all I wanted was to get to the line. So most of the time, people who are being watched so closely, it's a difficult life, and you don't realize that until you've been in that position, And so I feel heartsick for the Obamas. I think the Clintons, the last time I saw him, he gave me a diet book and told me I need to go vegan. So,
thank you.
Yeah, he sent me 6. No, actually, truthfully, he gave me one on the spot. It was up in his place, his library in Arkansas, in Little Rock. He said, Mel, listen, let's be truthful here. What have you been eating? You need to go. So he sent me 6 books. He gave me one.
Is this after or before he lost the weight?
No, this is after.
Okay,
since he's lost the weight, and he stopped eating hamburgers. Remember, he was a hamburger freak. He's become a minister to everyone.
He looks too skinny now.
He
doesn't look
real,
well.
Well, he doesn't eat meat, and he only has like a bite of turkey on Thanksgiving, and you know, he says he feels really, really good, and you know, this is better for his heart, I'm sure.
Yeah,
you know, so anyway, so the only thing I have to say to anybody in a parting word is that the only thing you really have that you can hold on to in the world is love. Not make America great. America is great now.
But it all starts with yourself.
It starts with, are you great?
Inside.
Yeah, and it starts with, are you great? Of course you are. You're God's perfect child. Whatever God you worship doesn't have to be mine. Find one somewhere. Yeah. And, you know, just remember who you are and where you are and how blessed we all are to be here rather than in Syria. How blessed God has made us all to be right here.
I was looking at photographs on Facebook yesterday. And I mean, I just, you know, brings tears to my eyes because it's like a shell. It's an empty shell.
But how would you like to be there for years and years and years, and that's all your kids know?
I know.
So, you know, what I think is that the most important thing we can have is gratitude for who we are and for what we have. And when I think about Melba, I'm going to be 75 in a minute here. And it's been, when I was a little girl singing at church, watching that man be hanged, I thought that could be my fate, and I had such a wearisome. The name of the book I'm writing about is called Baby Warrior, because that's such a wearisome growing up, such a wearisome time in my life, say from age 1 through 12 or so, until my grandmother gave me, you know what she gave me? She was a maid in White Ladies' Kitchens, and when they would throw out their stuff, she would get it and remake it. So she brought me home this globe for my birthday. And when I was about 12, and that's when I got to see that, look, wait a minute, Little Rock isn't the only place. Is that right? Look how big that world, and I can get out of here. I've been wanting a stork to take me straight up and out, but I can get on a bus or a train, and I can get out of here, right? And so, I'm just, you know, if I had thought when I was that little girl sitting in that church that this is what my life would be like, I'd have been absolutely astonished, you know, because when I sat there, I thought, I used to think at some point when you're in a situation like that, you think there's no way out, but there always is, and that way out is always God. So I'm grateful for that.
Absolutely.
So I think what we have to be is grateful.
Yes. Amen.
And loving.
Amen. Amen. And first to yourself, because then you can share it.
You can't love anybody until you share. You've got to love
with yourself. Yeah.
Whoever you are.
Well, one of the biggest reasons why I wanted you to come here and share your experience is because you are a wonderful example for humanity and for kids, for adults too. But
thank you.
That's why I wanted you here.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here, and I think you're
doing for sharing.
A great job. Anytime you introduce people to other people and they get to share discussions, you know.
Oh, I love it. It's wonderful.
It's
and
a
then
wonderful
I can
thing.
get to know you. Actually, I haven't really said too much about my history, but my ancestry signed the Constitution. My family on my mother's side came in on the 1700s. And Charles Coatsworth Pinckney was his name, yeah. So my family goes back a long way, and I pray to God he didn't have slaves. He was an educator. He started the first Bible Society in the U.S.
Oh,
that's
great
one of
history.
his.
That's why you're so interested in everything that's going on.
Yes.
Is that coming down through the generations?
Well, yeah, and it's coming out in me. It is.
Good
and
for you.
Especially the God part and the unconditional love, because that's what it's going to take to save humanity.
We don't have anything else.
That's right.
Nothing else.
Amen. Thank you.
God bless.
God bless you.
Namaste.
Namaste. I'll leave you with this. Never give up, even if things look impossible. Be grateful, and be grateful for your freedom of choice, freedom to learn, earn, and discern. Eat healthy. Good nutrition feeds the mind and your body temple. Feed your spirituality with meditation and prayer. Love yourself unconditionally. Stop criticizing, stop judging, and forgive yourself and others. Stop allowing others to dominate the way you feel and think about yourself. Be compassionate and with yourself first. Share your abundance and wealth with others in whatever form that may be. When fear knocks, let faith answer the door. Wealth is the ability to fully experience life, by Henry David Thoreau. Thank you, Marin TV, for facilitating our show, and especially to my crew, Eric, Brad, Eric, Ginger, and Lori. Thank you. If you like our show, please let us know at #MarinTV or on our Facebook page. Please support and become a member of Marin TV. Bye for now. Until next time.